Welcome back, everyone, to episode 46. There are always these, under the radar check marks for teams throughout a season. I think the first is Thanksgiving. Can you get off to a fast start in the regular season? Then comes Christmas Day, and we sort of assess where these teams are. You're at about just over a third of the way through the season, so it's a great place to see where your team stands in the entire landscape of the NBA. You have the All-Star break as well. That sort of stretch between Christmas and the All-Star is a pretty long stretch, and things can change tremendously. But man, do we have a great slate of NBA games on Christmas Day this year. And I know the NFL, has sort of retaken or taken over that day, but with so many of the teams already eliminated from playoffs, the NBA should have most of the viewers because some of these games are not only playoff previews, some of them are rematches from earlier in the season. NBA Cup rematch in the 2 p.m. mark between the Thunder and the Spurs. We're going to preview that. We're going to preview all these games. Just some fantastic watches around the NBA on Christmas Day. But I think we start with the early game. We'll just go in order here. These two teams in the 12 p.m. mark are the only two Eastern Conference teams. This matchup looked great coming into the season with the projected top two teams in the Eastern Conference in the Cavs and the Knicks. And the Cavs, I think they're going to get embarrassed on Christmas Day because they have not had a great start to the season. In fact, they are well under where players, teams, fans expected this team to be. Right? I probably had this team as the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they're, I think they're not even in the play-in right now. Maybe they're, just in the play-in. They're one game above 500. They have definitely had a lot of injuries that have derailed this season, and I expect them to get it around, figure this out because they just have too much talent not to. But they're shooting at, career lows. Some of their star players in Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, play a huge part in the failures of this team. Evan Mobley's been out a little bit as of recently, but when he's been in, I'm not saying he's had a bad season, but he's well under, what he had last year when he was a, quote-unquote top 10 player in the NBA as, sort of noted by the second-team All-NBA selection, right? That sort of says you're a top 10 player in the NBA given that it's now positionless, right? If it was if you had positions, right, he probably wouldn't be on that list. But that being said, he has not played great. Darius Garland has been horrific from shooting. The Cavs are, a lot of their players are shooting in the low 30s. Donovan Mitchell has really been the only guy that has, held his stride, you could say. And I think that the one player, right, you can double him as much as you want right now because other guys are not filling in the gaps. As for the Knicks side, right, the Knicks, Jalen Brunson's played well. I think this team is probably going to overtake the Pistons at some point this season, as I said earlier on the show. Just because I think the Pistons, they're a great team, but they have that one fatal flaw, which is they're not a great three-point shooting team, and I think that will come back and hurt them. I'm not saying the Pistons aren't going to be able to make a run in the playoffs or anything. They're definitely, them and the Knicks are far away the best two teams in the East, although the Celtics are catching up slowly. But that being said, the Knicks are playing well right now, best they've played all season, and the Cavs are not playing well, and I think this game is going to be, if the Cavs don't figure it out, it's going to be a utter domination from the Knicks. The second game is the game that I think they probably should have moved to. I guess, a lot of people will be watching 2 I guess there's not, there's not really a better time because you don't want to do it during dinner. But Spurs Thunder is going to be one of the best games of the day, right? They already played in the NBA Cup. That was one of the best games of the season. The Spurs holding on, snapping the Thunder streak. By the way, the Thunder have lost 2 games in the last week now to the Spurs and to the Wolves on Friday night. The Spurs are looking to make a statement here, saying that they've arrived. They have now beaten the champs twice, the reigning champs, and the team that's projected to possibly break the winning record or game wins record for a season at 73. And I think this is a possible Western Conference finals sort of preview. I don't know if these two teams will make it all the way. It just depends on how the sort of bracket shapes out. You still have the Rockets and the Nuggets who also play on Christmas Day. We'll talk about that next. But that being said, Wemby, he's back. Hartenstein's back for the Thunder. And, I know the matchup is the, Chet versus Holmgren versus Wemby. They don't often go one-on-one because just they play, it's funny, centers usually don't guard other centers, right? There are some centers that, are not historically great defensively or are more help defenders like Wemby is, right? Wemby's not going to be doing great, point of attack defense. He's going to come over from his man and block a shot, something like that. And that's why you put him on a smaller, guard or something that is not as talented or is not the main, source of offense for the other team, which is, why I'm not going to say it's sad to see Wemby and Chet. They don't often go one-on-one. But that being said, they're going to have some, moments in the game where, Wemby blocks Chet or Chet blocks Wemby or, gets dunked on, and that just highlight reels for the ages. The last 3 games here, I think, are all great games. I mean, the NBA has done a great job of picking games, as they always do for Christmas Day. Mavericks Warriors, that's probably the worst of the 5, but it's still going to be fun to see Cooper Flagg play on Christmas Day, his first Christmas Day experience. I'm sure there'll be many more to come. And, the Warriors, they should win, but I'm not really sure because the Warriors have had such an up and down season. I don't know if you guys saw on Monday it was, but Draymond Green, Steve Kerr calls a timeout. Draymond Green is, pretty upset, and they're arguing at each other in the timeout. Draymond Green, decides, this is early in the third quarter, by the way, decides to leave the court and go to the locker room. He didn't come back out. Steve Kerr said he wasn't going to play anyway had he come back out, but he just stays in there for the entire game. The Warriors lose. So just a weird, environment going on in Golden State. They're at 15-15, right? Not where you wanted this team to be. Bringing in all the veterans that they did. Al Horford has not played well this season. And it's just a rough state for the Warriors right now. As for the Mavs, they did lose to the Pelicans the other night, but they do have some signature wins. They are on the upcoming. I think ever since they took, Cooper Flagg off the ball and put him in that, his normal power forward position, he's excelled, and this team is getting better now. They still have some bad losses like they had against the Pelicans, but they have some signature wins on the season as well. And then, the late night games here. First one, Rockets, Lakers. Yes, the Rockets have dropped some games to some lottery teams as well. They brought in Kevin Durant for, crunch time situations, clutch games, and they haven't been a great crunch time team. I think the Lakers, they still need to play a little bit better defense transitionally. They're getting sort of ran out or outrun on some nights as well, and that Rockets have that ability to run on them as well. But that crunch time, situation, I trust the Lakers more just because you have, Luka Doncic, you have Austin Reeves, you have LeBron James, all three players that could win you a game at any moment. And the Rockets, they have Kevin Durant, they have some of their young point guards that have been playing well. And I think it really hurts not having Fred VanVleet as your traditional point guard that can facilitate play in the final 5 minutes of a game. But that being said, they shouldn't be this bad in crunch time. So we'll see what happens with that one. I think, we talked about the 2 o'clock game, Wemby and the Spurs against, SGA and the Thunder going out against each other. But I think, the second best game to that one is the latest game of the day between the Nuggets and the Wolves. I mean, this has turned into a great rivalry, a battle of the coaches, who's going to get ejected first. But, all jokes aside, the Wolves, they're coming off against some big wins where they beat the Thunder on Friday. They beat the Bucks over the weekend. I think tonight, as I'm recording this, they played the Knicks, so we'll see how that happens, or the result of that game. You'll know by the time this episode comes out. But, this game is definitely a potential, Western Conference Final preview as well, or maybe second round matchup. They've matched up in the playoffs for the last couple of years. Splitting sort of. The Nuggets have played really well. Anthony Edwards has played extremely well as of recently, and these two players are just, they love going at it. And, Anthony Edwards is going to bring the trash talk with him. Nikola Jokic is much more of a casual player, but, you see him bring out the emotions sometimes as well. And it's just going to be an extremely fun game to watch later that night.